Sport mode, traction off. Toyota calls that expert mode. Let's find out. Roll on power. 3-cylinder thundering away onto the banking at the Roval. What a cool experience. Welcome to Downshift. My name is Matt and I'm here in beautiful and sunny Charlotte, North Carolina, thanks to my friends at Toyota, because I'm checking out the newly facelifted 2025 GR Corolla. This little pocket rocket made big waves when it came out a few years ago, and it has some heavy hitters to compete with. Golf Rs, Elantra Ns kind of, but most notably the Civic Type R from Honda. So I'm gonna walk you through the best and the rest, what's changed for this year, and see how it stacks up. Let's get into it. First thing we'll touch on is the interior build and materials, and it's just not quite Rolls-Royce, but you wouldn't expect it to be. Now this point won't shock anyone, but it is worth mentioning. You do get some nice features in here, but the build and materials are slightly less impressive than you get in the Civic Type R and the Golf R from VW. This might be on kind of the same plane, maybe a little bit nicer than a Hyundai Elantra N. The interior is fine, but you get gunmetal accenting now in the cabin for 2025. The seats are actually really nice, comfortable. You've got the ultra suede and the leather combo with the red stitching, and the GR logo etched and stitched into the headrest itself. You get a heated steering wheel, so again, it's fine. It's just not quite as nice as some of the others. But the truth is, it's a dressed up Corolla, and no one expects their hot hatch to feel like a Bentley. That's why it's not Bentley money. That's why it's GR Corolla money. And then when it comes to the trunk and the cargo area, it's just a little bit smaller than some of the rivals. You get 17.8 cubic feet of space here, and that's a bit smaller than you would get in a Civic Type R, and there's a big reason for that. One, they've taken the battery from underneath the hood and put it underneath the trunk floor here. They've done that for weight distribution purposes, so their head was in the right place. It's just executed, it does result in a little bit less or compressed cargo area. So the trunk is still practical, just not quite as practical as the Honda. And this one's a little bit small, maybe it's a bit of a nitpick, but you don't have a center console here. Now we're used to seeing this sort of thing. They remove the center console for weight savings. We were just in the BMW M4 CSL, you know, hardcore Porsches, like extreme track variants of cars that already exist, remove the center console for weight savings, but there was never a center console here to begin with on the GR Corolla. And this isn't the Morizo edition, this is just a GR Corolla, and you don't have a center console here. Now of course you do have a glove box and other places to put things in the cabin, but I went to lean my elbow here, not a good idea. But switching gears and talking about all the positive things about this newly refreshed Corolla, they've made some huge improvements under the skin and things you don't even see, but they're important, so we gotta talk about them. Like for one, there's been a huge focus on cooling the car, and thank God for that. Revised front bumper and grille allows more air to come in, and you've got larger brake ducts to keep your brakes cooler, and you've got a sub-radiator option that's added to the left front side of the fascia for added cooling of the entire system. And underneath the car, you have a new transfer cooling duct for your all-wheel drive system, so the system doesn't overheat and then stop sending power to the rear. And then in terms of suspension, you've got tweaks there as well. You've got revised trailing arm mounting points. They're 1.1 inches higher, and a lot of focus is on keeping that inside rear wheel controlled and minimizing tripoding so you have more contact patch and more grip. You've got revised damping and spring rates. You get new rebound springs and new rear coils. And you've got Torsen LSD standard front and rear on all trims now. And they've done things like changing the bushings to make the car overall feel more rigid. Again, a lot of this stuff you're not seeing just by looking at the car, but you will see it pay dividends when you take this thing on the track. And you should, and we will. And then of course, there's the engine. It's the same 1.6 turbocharged 3-cylinder, that G16E GTS that we had at the initial year. 300 horsepower, but now 295 pound-feet of torque. That's up 22 pound-feet, which is a huge increase percentage-wise. Max boost is about 26.3 PSI, and if you go for your new automatic-equipped car, you'll look at about 22 mpg combined, or 24 for the manual-equipped car. The turbo noises are dramatic, and the car does want you to rev it out, so you get some rewarding sensation with the power being a little bit higher up. I love this engine. I love the 3-cylinder. I love the fact that it's not a 4-cylinder. It's a little bit unique and you have to chase revs a little bit. You don't get that from turbocharged cars. So there's this feeling of like you've accomplished something when you really get the most out of this mill. And then of course, how could we not talk about the GR4 all-wheel drive system? Now, all-wheel drive is standard and it has 3 different torque maps. The all-wheel drive system is really sophisticated, and now it has that cooling duct that it needed from the jump. It is a software-based system, so it does minimize that parasitic loss, so you get the most power out of the engine possible. But like I said, there's 3 different ways that you can split torque: normal, gravel, and track. Gravel is going to be your 50-50 split, half the power to the front, half the power to the rear. Track is going to be a 70-30 split with more power going to the back to promote a little bit more rotation. And normal, your day-to-day setting, is going to be 60% to the front and 40% to the rear. That'll be a little bit more efficient, get you better fuel economy, and also be a little bit more stable and approachable for you just driving to work. So it makes a lot of sense. But the good thing is that you do have all-wheel drive, whereas you don't even have it as an option on the Type R. And that could be a little bit of an issue in places like Wisconsin in times like November through March. And then we're going to talk transmission, because there's a big change for this year. Last year there was 1 transmission on offer, 6 speeds and 3 pedals, but this year for 2025 you get the 8-speed direct automatic transmission, or DAT. It makes it more accessible for more drivers, and it uses a close ratio setup that they say was developed on track and at rally stages. The truth is the ratios are very, very similar to what you get in the manual, but you also get an automatic transmission cooler, which isn't a bad idea. And Toyota says, and they have a little graph, this is faster than the rival DCTs, of course Hyundai's DCT and VW I have to assume with their DSG, and also twice as fast as shifting in the 6-speed IMT, the manual GR Corolla. But you still can have the manual transmission, and I'm assuming a lot of you will want that. And they've made a nice improvement by moving the IMT, or rev matching button, from on the left of the steering wheel to into your center console where it kind of belongs. In the past, I wasn't a huge fan of the throws and some of the clutch engagement on the manual equipped cars for the GR Corolla, but we're going to test this thing tomorrow on the racetrack and see if that still remains true. But I think one of the important things here is that you do have the option of an automatic here. Now, some people will say, oh, it's sacrilege, it should be manual only. But again, having options is always better than not having options. I remember doing some videos as this was debuting, and more than a few people were in the comments saying, I'm so glad that it has all-wheel drive, and I'm so glad that it has an automatic. So I think Toyota's opening up to a new market and getting more butts in seats of GR Corollas, and that makes more enthusiasts, and then everybody wins. We're in sport mode, traction off. Toyota calls that expert mode. Let's find out. New GR Corolla. You can really feel that extra 22 pound-feet. I like this gearbox, I'll tell you right now. Track out, great body control, good front end. That was an issue that I had with the last one last year. Felt like the front end was fighting me. Probably don't need to be in second there. I like this gearbox, I gotta say, I really do. I like the gearbox. They made some fuss about it's faster than the DCT from Hyundai, it's faster than the DSG. They don't name them, but you kind of know what they're talking about. But I gotta say, the downshifts are crisp. It shifts and takes me right up to redline when I want it to. Roll-on power, 3-cylinder, thundering away onto the banking at the Roval. What a cool experience. Chassis control, really good. They've done a lot of changes. They're not super sexy changes, not stuff that you would see just by looking at the car, but a lot of cooling work, a lot of suspension retuning went into this car. And you can feel the difference. The front end feels so much more willing to dive into a corner. The chassis feels rigid and more responsive. Brakes, new brake cooling, new brake duct cooling, more cooling for the for the center diff, for the all-wheel drive system. More cooling on the engine. This car feels more dynamic for sure than last year. It feels more natural, feels more organic. Civic Type R is going to be a little bit 65 pounds lighter, but this, give or take, you're at 3,300 pounds. It's not a heavy car. You get all-wheel drive with that extra 65-pound penalty, you could say, over the Type R. But man, it feels good. Feels natural. I do like the new DAT. The new automatic is pretty cool. You get launch control. It shifts well. It makes sense. I might still get the manual just for me, just for my daily thing that I want, but the auto is good, and I think it's going to get more butts in seats and more people get to experience this car, which I think is pretty cool. So good job, Toyota. And when it comes to styling, I like the look of the Civic Type R, but I really like the look of the GR Corolla. And for this year, there's 4 different colors that you can option. And you get a black grille and black hood vents, but your grille has been updated, and that's kind of the main thing that you can see that's changed for this year. Again, some of those revisions from the grille and bumper helped cool the car, which is a good thing, like the larger brake ducts. But there's 3 grades that you can get, and on your top one, you get the Premium Plus with the forged carbon roof. You get 18-inch wheels, they're satin black finish, they look really cool, and they're wrapped around in Michelin Pilot Sport 4 tires. You do get front and rear flares, and they seem to be widened even more, if that could have been a thing. And the front shoulder does still have that gill. And your rear hip flare has kind of a hard chine, almost like a speedboat. And you still get the GR4 logo embossed onto your side skirt. And you still have the triple outlet exhaust, which does look very, very cool. And when it comes to the rear seats, it's pretty decent. I mean, I have a reasonable amount of space for a hot hatchback here. I've got an inch or 2 of knee room in front of me. I can sit back here without brushing my hair on the roof, which is pretty nice. You do get the suede and the leather two-tone with the red contrast stitching. You do get some chargers back here. And you have a shocking amount of cup holders, though they're not exactly where you would think. You've got 1 in either of the doors, and of course you've got 2 in the center here. But the thing that puts this rear seat above the Type R rear seat is that you have 1, 2, 3 seat belts versus you only have 2 seats in the back of the Type R. And when it comes to some of the tech and features that you get here on the GR Corolla, you get a surprising amount of stuff. Like for one, you get a head-up display as standard on your Premium Plus trim. You get a fully digital instrument cluster, which looks great. You got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto on your bigger center screen, and that connection for that wireless Apple CarPlay is going to be way more reliable than what you've seen from Honda's Civic Type R connection. You got JBL audio, you get a wireless charger in here. You don't get a 360 camera, but you have a reverse camera, obviously. And your safety suite, you've got Toyota Safety Sense 3.0, which is great to see here, and you even get adaptive cruise even with the manual transmission. And let's not forget, adaptive cruise with the manual transmission is not even something that you can get in a BMW M2. So I'm impressed here with the features. And then finally, when it comes to price, the GR Corolla for 2025 starts at $38,860. You add $1,135 for destination, but you compare that to where the Type R is starting at 45 grand. I mean, that's 6 grand, more than 6 grand more than where the GR Corolla starts. And then you think the Golf R starts at almost $46,000. The GR Corolla then still represents a value in this segment, I think, in terms of performance, in terms of transmission option that you're not going to have an option for in the Honda or the VW, and the fact that you can have all-wheel drive. You're getting all the performance and all the fun for comparatively less money. Now before we jump on track, there's a couple little odds and ends. Like for one, when you buy a GR Corolla, you get a complimentary membership to the National Auto Sport Association, and you get 1 free day of HPDE, or high performance driving experience. That's really cool. Helps you get to know your car and at its limit, which is kind of the point. And this isn't something you have to worry about on the automatic cars, but on the manual cars, it automatically blips the throttle a little bit as you let the clutch out, so it's really difficult to stall this thing. So if you're a new driver or a new enthusiast learning stick, GR Corolla might be something you want to look into. Let's go for a drive on the track.